What's a workplace secret that everyone in your industry knows, but customers don't? I used to work for a bank, and here's one most consumers don't realize. It's often way easier to get trade lines removed than people think. Banks typically only retain detailed account records for about 4 to 5 years, not the full 7 years that negative items can appear on a credit report. Why? Storage, compliance costs, and diminishing business value. If you request a debt validation and the creditor or collection agency can't properly verify the debt with original documentation, they're legally required to stop collection and remove the trade line. This is especially common when a debt has been sold to a collection agency. Since they didn't originate the debt, they often don't have the paperwork needed to validate it. Result, trade line gone, collection closed, debt written off. It's not magic, it's record-keeping economics and consumer law quietly doing their thing. Story 2. Plumbing HVAC service technician here. Sometimes we don't know why it stopped working, and we don't know why it started working again. I'll tell you it was a fuse or a loose wire or something like that, but the truth is everything checked out fine. I fiddled with it and it started working again. No idea how or why, but I'll take the win. It's not a manufacturer defect, the installer messed it up when he put it in and I need to fix it. I can't tell you that one of my guys made a mistake because you'll lose trust in our company, so I'll blame the manufacturer and yell at the installer later. The supplier didn't give me the wrong material, I forgot to order it. Sometimes they give me the wrong material, but not this time. You'll never talk to them, so it's easy for me to blame them. Story 3. A lot of what attorneys bill you for is total BS. Most attorneys bill in 6-minute increments or 0.1 of an hour. That 0.1, which might represent $45 or $60 to you, could be a 5-second Teams message to me, the paralegal, saying, "Be sure to draft that motion the client requested," which was A, totally unnecessary, I got the same email, and B, shows up on your bill like "instruct paralegal on drafting such and such motion," as if they were giving me step-by-step instructions. They weren't. Legal fees are like weddings. The average consumer has never dealt with them before and has no reference point to compare them to. Story 4. I work in car manufacturing. The number of defects we allow through has really made me think twice about any vehicle I plan to buy. Working where I do, I know exactly what to look for and where to find it. Now, mind you, these defects aren't related to safety. Most are electrical or cosmetic. For instance, while installing seats, we once ran out of the bolts used to secure them to the body. Instead of stopping production, we just finished building the cars. It was funny to see the operators try to drive them off the line to the lot, to be held until they could be repaired without the seats being bolted down. However, some things make it all the way to the consumer. For example, an entire batch of 150 vehicles made it to dealerships without rear windshield wipers. Story 5. It's been a while since I was in this industry, but it still holds true. No matter what your dad told you, going to the dealership and asking for the cash price on a car is the worst thing you can do. The dealership can make more money on financing a vehicle than on the sale itself. Telling them upfront that they won't get that money on the back end incentivizes them to keep the price high. Let them think you're financing with them, negotiate the actual price of the car while ignoring the mathematical jujitsu they try to pull on the monthly payment, come to an agreement, and then tell them you're paying the cash. Story 6. I don't know if this counts, but I work in the financial crime risk industry, and a lot of customers know about the currency transaction report threshold, but don't really know what it actually means. Basically, if you deposit or withdraw currency over $10,000 in a single day, U.S. financial institutions are obligated to file a CTR. For customers, this simply means that your transaction is noted along with your information. Most banks have an automated system for this. Having a CTR file doesn't mean anything for the vast majority of customers, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a paper trail in case you do end up being involved in illicit financial dealings. However, a lot of people know there's a threshold and believe that if they exceed it, the bank will report them to the government. People hear that, think it's bad, and will purposely transact just below the reporting threshold. That, however, is bad. In fact, it's illegal. It's called structuring when you purposely avoid reporting requirements like this. More often than not, the people I've interacted with who avoid the reporting threshold do so because an auntie or grandpa told them the bank would report it. It's a lot of fear-mongering that results in people actually breaking the law. I feel like many customers who engage in structuring aren't involved in any other illegal activity. They're just ignorant of what is actually being reported and what it means for them, which is basically nothing. Story 7. Everything you do on your bank or money-sharing app is recorded and monitored. You think it's funny to put 4 substances or intimate references in the memo of every payment and transfer you send, but one day your account could get flagged for literally any reason for review, from suspicious logins by new devices to you reporting theft, and those funny memos will require whoever is looking at your account to send it over to the team that investigates for substance sales and human trafficking. And they might clear you for not being a trafficker, but if you get money every week from your roommate with something like "for that kitty," In the memo, they'll shut down your account for violating the terms of service because that's enough to determine you're using your account for adult services. Story 8. I used to work for a dating app, and it's such a common misconception that the best matches are purposely being hidden behind a paywall in order to get you to subscribe. That's great. In reality, it's the opposite. Your best matches get shown to you right away and for free because we want you to feel like there are great, attractive people on the app. Your hidden likes are mostly people who you've previously passed on but liked you, or people who don't fit the preferences you've selected. If it seems like you're getting lots of likes behind a paywall but you're liking people in the free section and not getting any matches, it's simply because those people don't like you back. You should genuinely lower your standards for surface level things like looks, and you may want to consider broadening your preferences if something isn't a deal breaker. In short, you should start liking uglier people. Otherwise, you shouldn't be surprised that you as a very average male aren't getting likes back from non-smoking models under 5 foot 1 inches within a 2-mile radius without pets that want children. Story 9. I speak both as someone who works in emergency medicine and as someone who has spent a fair share of time in emergency departments on the patient side. I do stupid crap on occasion and end up injuring myself. Whoops. Take a book, headphones, or something else to entertain yourself. You never want to be the person who gets rushed to the front of the line and into the unit as quickly as possible. That is usually a very bad sign. Being a little bored is typically a great sign for you, even though it sucks in the moment. On a side note, please don't be surprised when you come to the hospital and we want to admit you. What did you think we were going to do for that severe chest pain, broken bone, or nasty wound? Give you an injection and a plaster and send you home? You need to be admitted so we can monitor, medicate, and operate on you to fix the problem and probably save your life. Story 10. I repair musical instruments. This isn't really a secret, more not common knowledge. I've seen a lot of low-income parents buy really cheap instruments with the hopes of giving their kid the opportunity to play in a band only to have them fail repeatedly. They eventually come to see me. I tell them the repair is going to be more than the value of the instrument. It was cheap because the shortcuts in manufacturing and material quality are so poor. Even then, I can't guarantee it'll work because something may break and I can't get parts to replace it. If they'd come to see their local shop in the first place, I guarantee you we'd have an affordable, quality horn. Even if we don't, we'd help you find one. It won't be pretty out of the box like the cheap one, but it will work and in all likelihood survive for another 25 years at least. Never turn your back on a Vito. It's so heartbreaking to see these parents so sad when I give them the news. They've blown their savings on something that won't work longer than a week. Story 11. LA County sent out many notices that they had finally set up an all-electronics recycling depot. My friends and I gathered all of our old computers, monitors, and printers, and I took them to the new location in the North San Fernando Valley. Being curious about all things related to recycling and the environment, I asked the person I gave the items to, "This is great that they're finally doing this, so how do I get these processed and recycled?" To which he laughed and said, "Yeah, they make a big deal out of it, but we just throw it in the smasher and then truck it all out to the landfill like all other trash." Typical LA, and dang the producers of such junk. Story 12. It's not necessarily a secret in my industry, but I'm a librarian and patrons do not seem to realize this. We don't know the answer to every question. We're actually just really good at knowing where to find the answer. Also, each of us has a different skill set, so if you ask us for help with someone and we refer you to another employee, it's not because we're pawning you off on someone else, it's because they can probably help you better. And lastly, you do not need to fill the silence while we search for your answer. In fact, the more you talk to us, we're trying to find your answer, the longer it'll take. Just shush and wait. It's okay for there to be silence. Story 13. Your social security number is definitely saved on many unredacted PDFs on unsecured servers. In many cases, it's saved unsalted in a database under the column SSNO right next to your date of birth and full name. I'm a consultant who gets hired to transfer and clean data for clients in the redacted field. Since the main purpose of the field I'm in is to print money, I'm guessing this is pretty standard. I don't have expertise in the how dangerous is an exposed social security number field, so I can't definitively say if this is bad or not, but it does feel icky. Story 14. I'm a certified Apple tech. When we fix an iPhone or a computer, people are so worried about giving us their passwords, like we're going to steal their money or their recipes or their pics will end up on Reddit. We do not give a crap about your stuff. We never look at your pics, we never read your emails. All we want to do is figure out your problem and fix it fast to get to the next repair. I know a lot of repair shops are sleazeballs and copy pics and worse, but a certified tech would not do this. Relax, people. All we want to do is fix your crap. Story 15. The American and Canadian power grid is an absolute mess. It's made of tons of tiny pieces owned by many different companies, ranging from giants that control several states to tiny municipalities that own a single substation. The only reason they all work together is that everybody knows each other, and graybeards, who know everything there is to know, hold it all together with tape and twine. Then there are the field techs who work their butts off, trying to piece together something useful from the BS the engineers tell them. Some companies build as cheaply as possible and run their equipment until it blows up. Others overbuild the crap out of things just so they can get reimbursed as much as possible for it, but somehow it works. Story 16. Paint and primer in one is a sales pitch. It's not a real thing and is actually impossible. With some exception, paint will always generally stick to paint. If a surface is already painted, all you need to do is give it a light sand before top coating. Some paints are able to stick directly to surfaces that would otherwise require priming, but they're still not paint and primer in one because you literally cannot surface, prep, and paint at the same time. Case in point, the owners of my building were painting the stairway banister with semi-gloss paint as that was what they were told to use. The banisters are semi-rough wood that they just clumsily installed to replace the old ones that were in a state of disrepair. I happened to be going up the stairs while they were painting and told them they needed to prime if they wanted a smooth surface, and they said they had paint and primer in one. I rolled my eyes and kept walking because I knew they weren't using the right paint for the result they wanted without a primer. 3 weeks later, paint was peeling, and in the places it wasn't peeling, it had been largely absorbed by the wood, resulting in a rough surface. Story 17. Maybe not every, but a good 90+% of bands are running backing tracks live. The goal of live sound is to make the band sound consistent every single night so every audience gets the same experience. The system's tech's job is to make the PA sound almost the same exact every night. The FOH job is to make the mix sound the same every night. And there's even a playback tech role now to make sure tracks and running smooth every night. Really, the only way to give a consistent sound every night is to pump backtracks. How loud the backtracks are depending on the band. Some bands it's a 75 live, 25 backtrack, 50-50. Or some bands are even doing 100% backtracks nowadays. Story 18. I used to work in restaurants and I have some insights. When ordering coffee, if we are out of regular coffee, we would rather serve you decaf than tell you we don't have it. The closer it gets to closing time, the less likely is that regular coffee is still ready or that there is any left, and the chances of us making more go way down. We just don't feel like making a whole pot for one customer 15 minutes before closing. However, I have never seen a single instance of the other way around, serving regular instead of decaf, so you are safe in that direction. When washing dishes, industrial dishwashing machines can run a load in less than 1 minute compared to over 45 minutes at home. Ever wonder how that happens so fast? Through a few sacrifices, of course. Mostly the water is reused between wash cycles. At the beginning of a shift, the unit is filled with fresh water. This water stays in the dishwasher between cycles. During the rinse cycle, a second spray rinses the dishes, often with sanitizer, which refreshes the tank slightly. Over multiple racks, the tank water gradually gets loaded with food particles and grease and the detergent balance strips. Once it's too dirty, you are supposed to drain and refill the tank so sanitation doesn't degrade. The problem is that during a busy rush, there's no time to drain and refill, which stops the line, and the dishwashing staff often doesn't care. To keep things moving, the dishes continue to be run through each wash, collecting more small food particles from previous cycles. The solution? A polishing station right outside the dishwasher where a person wipes the food particles off the plates, silverware, and glassware. The dishes are still warm and moist enough that the particles come right off most of the time. I have seen this happen in restaurants both high and low volume and both fancy and cheap. This is a big reason why bar glasses are washed at the bar. That unit only handles glassware, not food plates, so the water stays cleaner. Plus, it results in much less breakage for thin glasses. Story 19. It's important for parents to not assume anything about their child's educational attainment. Teachers today generally have little, if any, authority to determine students' final grades, whether they will be promoted or whether they will graduate. State testing is gamed to within an inch of its life to assure population subgroups show expected growth. In many districts, school administrator bonuses and promotions are tied to test performance metrics and promotion and graduation rates. As a result, it's not unusual for 20 to 30% of public school students who graduate each year to be functionally illiterate. That may even be a low estimate considering that the most recent data is a few years old. Story 20. If you're looking for a hotel room on the day of your stay, call and ask to speak to a manager. Ask the manager what is the absolute best rate they can give you for that night. If they stick hard to the current rate that's out there, likely the hotel is close to selling out and therefore they don't believe they need to fall back on rate. But most managers know that every 24 hours they have a product that expires and there is an inherent cost to a hotel room even if it goes unsold. So they're looking at only 80% or 90% of their hotel sold that day. There is a very good chance they will give you a decent deal to get you in the door. Some hotel companies empower their staff to do these also, such as the front desk agent, but I wouldn't change it. I would just ask to speak to the manager. This works much better than trying to wheel and deal at the front desk when you're there with a lobby full of other people that may have paid higher rates. Story 21. I am a 911 call taker/dispatcher. For most agencies, whether you call 911 or the non-emergency line, it goes to the same person. If you think, well, it's not an emergency, and dial the non-emergency number but don't know where you are, which happens a lot with people who are driving, I'm just going to tell you to hang up and call 911 so I can see your location on my screen. And please, for the love of all things holy, if you're going to call in a driving complaint, dial 911 so I can keep track of your location and update my officers as you're moving. We will never be genuinely upset with you for calling 911 unless you do it maliciously or as a prank. If you're not sure, just call. I'd much rather you call when you don't need to than not call when you do. Story 22. Gemstones are worth nothing. Not just diamonds, but essentially every gemstone is worth nothing at the industrial scale. We take customer jewelry and melt it down for a gold value. The gems, non-diamonds, all get thrown in a box where they have piled up for the last 40 years. It is not cost effective for us to do anything with these gems. It wouldn't even be worth someone's hourly wage to sort through them. The diamonds can be resold for about 1/10 of their retail price, but they have to be regraded, which cuts down the profit margin. Old diamonds without modern cuts are worth more as industrial diamond dust. But these same gemstones get sold for $2,000 when set in a pendant because of their quote-unquote clarity. Story 23. I'm disabled and have to take work where I can find it. I work at a health insurance company doing customer support. As of 2020, 2021-ish, like with most companies, our customer support has switched purely to automation and AI. However, customer service reps are still utilized to help people that know how to bypass the automation. Our supervisors have been drilling it into us that when those scenarios happen, we need to chastise the customers for not using the automated helper. Initially, we refused because we don't want to be a schmuck. The supervisors got angry and threatened us to do the job properly. As a result of this, if you somewhat get through to an agent, you are going to be treated as if you're a burden because the company wants to punish people for not using automated helpers. Story 24. The women's clothing lines, Free People, Urban Outfitters, and Anthropology all source their clothes from the same factories in Punjab, India. The clothes all cost the same from a manufacturing standpoint, but they are rebranded across the 3 stores for different price points. It's the same material, the same workers, the same process, and the same factory. Most of the money is spent on marketing across the 3 stores to make some feel more luxurious in their branding compared to the others. The margins on the merchandise are always over 80% net, all for operating costs. The largest expense for the stores is the rent, as they are usually located in high-rent areas. The workers in those factories in Punjab make around 25 cents an hour. The highest material cost for items, including all sourcing, is around $5 maximum per clothing item. And if you're learning a thing or two, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 25. Mobile phone networks. International roaming is a huge cash cow, especially for UK networks. They pay a flat annual interconnect fee with roaming partners, and that's it. Annual cost. A network I used to work for was trivial per year total, as they were part of a larger multinational group. Spread across 24 million subscribers, it was less than 0.1p per annum per customer. Any per minute, per megabyte charges they pass on to customers above and beyond this cost, which is trivial, is pure profit. It's why it was so easy to turn off charges for EU roaming, but even easier to turn it back on due to Brexit, as it's pure profiteering. Story 26. Activism, mostly civil rights and nonprofits. The unfortunate reality is that way too often funders get to dictate what programs get or don't get funded. And funders don't often want to fund the programs that would address the issue at hand most effectively. Rather, they want the one that uses the right buzzwords or is the most photogenic or easiest to access with concrete numbers. How sometimes funders would maliciously fund an ineffective program, and sometimes we know and we still need to take the money anyway and try to make something useful out of it anyway. Also, there's nothing funders hate more than a program where 80% of the cost is just paying people for labor. Even this is very often all that's actually needed. We hate it, but unless we have an alternative source of funds, this is usually our best option. Story 27. When your company contracts out of Mexico, they overlook standards and regulations in favor of profit. That wiring harness for the small aircraft you're buying, it gets the Made in America stamp, but 95% of the work was done by an anonymous team that doesn't get the training they need to do things right. Production quotas are more important, and you will be made to find and fix an endless series of errors that aren't actually being relayed to those plants across the border, despite your documentation of workmanship issues. Story 28. Massage therapist here. We know a lot more about the body and you probably don't, so please listen to us. I have worked on at least 50 to 60 doctors and surgeons in my career, and not a single one knew anything about the muscular system and how things connect or function. Doctors of physical therapy are the only ones who know it all, and probably the only ones who generally know more than we do in the context of manual therapy and soft tissue. That being said, there are some real kooky massage therapists out there that use a lot of pseudoscience to back up their claims about your health, so be wary. Story 29. I work for an industrial printing company. The ink we sell has a 700% markup. One factory in Europe generates about 8 million euros a day in revenue. Other consumables like ribbons, solvent, and cleaning material have at least 300% markup. Almost every machine we sell is at a loss and we don't care. We make money on services, finance, and consumables. We go to great expensive ways to make sure we lock you in using us and only our consumables. It's just carbon black pigments, solvents, and wax. The small amount of special chemical markers we use to make sure our customers don't use non-branded ink costs more than the ink themselves. Story 30. Old job I used to have. All student loans are through the same guarantor, and they are who decides if you get it or not. So if one turns you down, there is no reason to apply to others. Whatever got you denied on one will be the same for the others. And when you call customer service for the loans, you'll get the same customer service people for the others. They just act like they work for that bank depending what number you called in on and refuse to acknowledge any other loans for other banks, even though they are also right there on screen. This also means we get people trying to fraud loans, and when it fails, they try other student loans. But guess what? You're already marked fraud for any and all banks for student loans. Been so long, things may have changed now though. Story 31. In flooring, your needs aren't considered the moment you leave the store with your future installation. What was quoted to you, whether accurate or not, is the level of service you'll probably receive. Because you never know what's under there until you rip the floor up, you get a better idea of what the job should have been billed for only after the work has started. The store will get upset at the installer if they deviate from the quote or ask for more money to do additional work. Often the store plays damage control between what they quoted and the actual result. The outcome is frequently that the store will secretly tell the installer to do things the easy way, or as I like to say, the just get whatever you can done way. So the customer owes for the new installation even if it was done wrong. Even if the customer requests something specific, the store tries to do everything it can to get away with as little as possible. It's tough being part of a 1099 crew that does everything correctly because we end up spending way more time on jobs. In our world, more time means less money. Story 32. I work in banking. I speak with customers all day. When I'm not able to do something about a policy, there are no offers available for you, or we can't waive a fee. Throwing how long you've been with us isn't going to change anything. This isn't a bank from the 70s where you would get a toaster for being a customer for 5 years. Sometimes I feel bad, sometimes I don't. It all depends on how you're treating me. If you throw around that you've been with the bank for 11 years and are mad that we won't refund your late fee for not having paid your bill on time, the fourth time this year, I'm not going to have sympathy for you. Even if you ask nicely, sometimes we can't do anything, but at least I'll try my damnedest to help you. Story 33. I worked in housekeeping on a 5-star river cruise ship. Used glasses are rarely replaced by new ones. Usually they're just wiped with a cloth to make them shiny again. The same cloth is used to polish glasses across 10 to 13 different guest cabins. Water bottles are usually refilled at the bathroom sink and then topped with the seal sticker to make them appear unopened. I learned all of this from a senior housekeeper to be able to finish my work on time. She didn't share everything, but housekeeping is all about cutting corners to the point where hygiene is compromised just so you can cope with the workload. Story 34. In the early 2000s, the big animation studios in the USA all colluded to informally stop hiring anyone currently working in the other studios within the agreement. This had a huge impact on wage growth for animation artists who couldn't move within the industry. 10 years later, a class action lawsuit had them all sued and settled for well over $150 million to the workers who experienced this sort of wage theft. Yes, House of Mouse, Shrek, all the big names were doing it. Story 35. I worked for a sleep diagnostic company during both SARS and the swine flu outbreaks in the mid-2000s. Not a lab, but a company who made the hardware and software that was installed in sleep labs and hospitals all across North America. Hospital sleep labs were almost always in the respiratory care wing. We had a team of technicians whose job it was to travel to hospitals and install the equipment. During SARS, Toronto was locked down and air travel in and out was almost completely banned. We had a tech who lived in downtown Toronto. Instead of recognizing the seriousness of the situation, the company had this guy drive to another city, usually Ottawa, and fly out there to bypass the flying ban. Just before swine flu really hit the news, something swept through our office. People were really freaking sick. Our traveling technicians were all forced out onto planes and into respiratory care wings of hospitals across the continent. Anyone who complained was told to shut up and do their jobs. Swine flu made several rounds through the office, and these guys were always traveling while sick. So yeah, my company helped spread 2 nasty viruses directly to hospital departments loaded with people who were, by definition, very vulnerable to the effects of said viruses. Story 36. I worked at Boston Market back in the 90s when I was still in high school. They're long gone now, and I'm sure things changed after I left when I went off to college. Not so much of a secret as it's something people would probably find surprising. Everything there, except for the pies and cakes, was made fresh, either made in back of house or at the commissary kitchen at one of the nearby locations. All of the proteins came in raw and were cooked on site. Chickens came from the commissary already loaded onto the spits for the rotisserie, but all of them were cooked in the ovens you saw behind the counter. The sides were prepped fresh in the back kitchen as well. Story 37. Throwaway account. I started working at Enterprise Rental Cars at the end of 2019. When the pandemic hit April of 2020, they laid a bunch of us off, then brought us back in July. Part of it was special training on how to effectively disinfect the cars between renters. They were advertising heavily that every car was sterilized between each customer. I cleaned exactly one car with the new procedure before the desk complained that I was taking too long to clean the car. I wasn't hitting their 3 cars per hour metric. All of the service agents dropped the cleaning procedures and went back to just a quick vacuum. They stopped complaining because we were hitting their vaunted 3 cars per hour clean metric. Also, the official policy when the oil change warning came up on the dash was to reset the mileage so the light would be off for the customer. Those poor cars never had the oil change unless they were otherwise in the shop for repair. Story 38. Pawn shop. Always clean the item before bringing it in and be ready to show it works. Be kind to the broker you're working with. This can go a long way in how they negotiate with you. Have the broker quote a price before you do. They will always ask what you're looking for to see if it's less than what they'd max offer. Negotiate after the broker quotes a price. They have no interest in your situation or financial struggles. Literally 80% of the people in there have the same issues, so stick to the general talk. Our shop would typically pay 25 to 30% of the new price found online or at retailers. Yes, the internet is available for them to reference. They also have set prices to pay for common items, video game systems, TVs, accessories, etc. If you're not comfortable only receiving around 25% of new for your item, even in good condition, don't bother coming in to sell and go to FB Marketplace instead. Inventory is the pawn shop's biggest failure point. It doesn't make the shop any money with items sitting on the shelf. The broker doesn't have any skin in the game for items on the floor for sale, so use that to your advantage. Make an offer less than the sticker price. Likely they will consider it and either accept or counter. Again, too much inventory ends pawn shops and they get a lot of it every day. Lastly, the biggest secret, always tell the broker you want to pawn your item instead of sell. Pawn shops would much rather give you a loan and you pay a large amount of interest and then have you pick up the item at the end. It removes the inventory aspect and doesn't waste labor or time trying to sell the item later on if it ever does sell. Not picking up the item you pawn doesn't hurt your credit score and nobody really keeps track of whether or not you pick up your items. Conversely, you're much more likely to get a few extra dollars for something you pawn due to the broker thinking you may come to pick it up, and the more they loan out to you, the more interest they will get. You will get much more room to haggle on items you sell if you tell them that you wish to pawn your item and just never pick it up. You're welcome. Story 39. I worked as a private security for people who make millions per year. Among them were church pastors, preachers, and other so-called religious men. And these religious men like the substances and they like the youngest girls. Despite having so much to lose, they are stingy when it comes time to pay. They are like movie stars, music makers, and other super rich people who live in regular houses, drive crappy cars, and live in your communities as the person next door. The creepy house in your block that has the weirdo stranger watching you from behind drawn blinds only goes out at night. It is because whoever lives there does not want to be recognized. 90% of my guard duty for these people was to dress like a bum and deal with service providers like phone men, internet and cable, landscapers, make sure the house was stocked with food and drink, and to accept packages. One of our clients had an 800 square foot hidey hole that looked like a rundown trailer house on the outside where she would watch movies, eat pizza, and talk with the assigned guard all night long. We had another trio of musicians who had a 3-bedroom townhouse and they would crash there to write songs, and the guard was the one ordering the food and running fetch errands. Story 40. Phase Technologies. They produce 3-phase machines and motor starters. If you work in the plumbing, oil, heavy equipment like lathes and ACs, etc., or more certainly in the farming industries, you may have heard of them. They primarily focus their sales in the farming industries to work on pivots and pumps, but did you know? Anytime they release a new product, they have most certainly not tested it enough in real-world conditions. Basically, knowing that the product that can cost thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars will malfunction, break, or catastrophically fail in less than a week from delivery. Furthermore, you want to buy a warranty at a premium price of $600 USD or more, guess what? You won't get any repair parts sent out to you, plus we don't have any service members that can come out to you to fix your 100,000 piece of equipment you just broke. Nope, you just have to pay to send it to us, that is, on your dime. And if we deem the issue to have been caused by you through whatever arbitrary nonsense we just make up, guess what? Your warranty is invalid and you now have to pay to get it shipped back to you. Oh wait, there's more. Did you buy one of the motor drivers for your garage door or something? Well, you see, they advertise that the 3-amp or 5-amp model can drive your door, but really you'll need a 30-amp driver even though your machine is rated for far less. So don't trust what they have on their site, whether it be warranty, details, or even price. Seriously, this is the scummiest company I've ever had the pleasure to work for, and am glad I no longer work for them. Story 41. Chewy has great customer service because they know that's what makes money. They do not give a crap about the human experience. I worked in an office without a bathroom. I was also forced to arrive at work early and stay late to power up and down my computer off the clock, which yes is illegal, and yes they were sued over it. I could go on. The fact that they preach the customer service practices they do almost makes it worse, because it's obvious that they know how to treat people with dignity and respect. They just don't believe their employees deserve it. Story 42. The goal of every Best Buy employee, as with most retail now, is to get you to sign up for a credit card or paid membership. If you already have them, then you're essentially a waste of their time. Every product they show you is because it has a promotion that goes with one of the two signups they need. Interest-free financing and member deals being the main hooks. There are more things to push depending on the department too. For example, if a laptop is being sold, the employee is expected to get them to sign up for Microsoft 365 on top of a credit card and paid membership. If you already know what you want, the best way to shop there is to order it online for in-store pickup. There is basically no opportunity to sell you on anything else since the sales transaction is already over. Story 43. This might get lost in the mix, but I once worked for a prominent hemp wellness company dealing in CBD, Delta-8, HHC, and similar products. They lean hard into their production methods and natural image, complete with lab-coated doctors, cited studies, and plenty of customer feedback. We were nothing more than a marketing company, and the business was basically a website. In fact, that's probably how most of that industry is run. The owners would source some crap, then brainstorm product names. If we had 5 products for sale, it was really 1 in 5 different boxes, and the verified lab tests weren't worth the paper the PDFs were printed on. Better still, because it was so easy, the bosses would create new businesses all the time. You hate company A, decide to switch to company B. Guess what? Same owners, same product, different package. And all these companies are the same. During COVID, for example, they had no problem saying crap like CBD cures COVID. A study on rats showed HHC might affect opioid use disorder. Our product stops addiction. It's used car salesmen pretending to be doctors. I've seen them take the do not call list and illegally mail them promos, and so much worse. What's scary now is that these smucks have begun selling the Kratom Synthetic 7.0. Now they're getting people hooked on real crap and treating it like some spices you buy at the bakery. Just pace yourself, they say. Stay far away from that industry. Story 44. Worked at 2 Tex-Mex restaurants. The family-owned restaurant was super popular. They had like 6 locations in town. The way the food was made was horrible. Almost everything was microwaved and most of the food served was leftovers. Rice, straight from the fridge. Beans, same. Ground beef for tacos, same. The only way you could guarantee fresh food is if it was anything that had to be grilled, like fajitas or quesadillas. The fillings were beef or chicken fajitas, maybe the fries from the kids' menu, but that's about it. It was just sad to see the cook make some fresh rice, but instead of serving it, he would stick it into the cooler, have to use the old stuff first. Order of chicken enchiladas, use the shredded chicken that's been sitting in the fridge for the last few days. Add tomato sauce and spices, roll it into the enchiladas, cover it with more tomato soup, add cheese, then toss it into the microwave to melt the cheese and heat up the chicken. Customers didn't finish their chips, back into the warmer, same for the hot sauce. They cut corners everywhere and only wash the kitchen floors once a week. They're all closed now, but were very popular for a while. On the other hand, I worked at another Tex-Mex restaurant, part of a chain, not Taco Bell. Everything was made fresh every day. The head chef arrived at 7 to have everything ready by 11. And even that time wasn't enough, as we would always rush towards the opening times. At night, they would throw away everything that wasn't used. The only thing we kept was ground beef, but we didn't use leftovers for tacos. We used it for filling in enchiladas. Both are now out of business, but the one who tried serving fresh food went out of business way before the other one did. Story 45. I worked at an Apple call center during the iPhone 4 launch. When we started getting calls about the phone disconnecting from cellular service if it was held a certain way, an internal knowledge base article went live giving us a script on how to push back against calls from people having the issue. Tell every customer that it's the best phone ever released and refuse any hardware replacements and free cases. Internal documents were leaked to tech websites. One of them came from the call center I worked at. Apple came in and locked down our call center really hard. They made us check our phones every day. They took all of the demo iPhones, iPods, and never provided demo iPads when those were released because they didn't trust us not to leak internal docs. So that means when someone called for help, we were flying blind. We weren't allowed to hold an Apple device at all, so we just used Google for everything. Story 46. I worked pizza delivery at a mom and pop shop around 2007. The owner asked me to prep food, and I was chopping, slicing, grating, whatever was needed. Without gloves, without a food handling license, and with no training, all as an 18 or 19-year-old kid. Often I would answer the phone, prep food, drive, prep some more, and handle money. I did everything that needed to be done with only a light washing of my hands. People absolutely loved the pizza, and the owner really did spend extra on quality ingredients. The cheese came from a specialty shop in New York, but yeah, I knew it was disgusting with all of the teenagers handling the food. Eventually, the owner retired and sold the place to a couple. They drove the business into the ground and folded after 2 years. I just looked them up, and the old owner got the place up and running again within the last year. It looks like he is prepping his son to take over. And if you liked any of these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.